Another attribute that's important to character, especially in a dangerous world, is courage. And of course, Jesus had courage. And thank God we've had people throughout history who, when it really mattered, when courage was required, stepped up to the plate and did things that the rest of us could only look at in awe. Um, One of the most courageous people I've ever known about, never met him, he died in 1948, was Polish, Witold Pilecki, who volunteered to get arrested by the Germans after they invaded Poland in 1939, in the hope that they would send him to this big sprawling place that we now know as Auschwitz to find out from the inside what was going on there. He had no assurance that he wouldn't simply be shot, but he got his wish. He got sent to Auschwitz, and from the inside, for 3 years, he created a resistance movement, stealing documents, smuggling them out.
Wow.
And then later did what only 143 other people ever did, successfully escaped from Auschwitz, joined the war effort in the Battle of Warsaw, captured by the Germans who, because he wasn't Jewish, didn't have the markings that would betray he'd been in a concentration camp. They just threw him in a POW camp. And then when the war was over, he was stationed by the Polish army in Italy when the Poles said, that doesn't look like the Soviets are going to leave. We need somebody back on the inside. So they send Pilecki to go spy on the Russians in his own country for 2 years, which he did. And he was eventually caught and executed. But wow, shouldn't we be grateful that there are such courageous people from time to time in history who set such an example for the rest of us?
It's really interesting to think about courage and how you get more of it.
Yeah.
Courage is one of the things we're in deficit
Yeah.
now. But it just seems to me like we are so wealthy as a society in America and the broader first world, Western world. Is it easier to be courageous when your back's against the wall, when you're Polish and the Germans are invading? Is that because it's survival instinct?
Yeah.
How do you think about the development of courage in the modern wealthy age? How do we do it?
I think there is something about being very prosperous, maybe even being at the top of the world in so many ways for so many decades, that does not lend itself to the development of courage. If you've got everything, then I think instinctively maybe many people will think, well, what do I need courage for? I've got it all. It takes some discernment. It takes some knowledge of history. It takes some understanding of what the world is really all about for people to develop courage in otherwise very positive, good times. But this remains a dangerous world, always has been. The world has always been full of people who, if given the chance, would take your property, would take your rights, would take your life. And they exist not only in our midst, but overseas as well. And so people who want to retain their freedom and their prosperity, I think, had better be on the alert at both the enemies from within and the enemies from without. And that means courage, speaking truth to power, is one element of courage, is always required. When you suggest maybe that we're losing some of that, I agree with it. And you asked, how do we teach it or encourage it? One way, I think, is people have to be better informed about the courageous people of the present day as well as those of the past. So I'm a great advocate of reading great biographies of great men and women who have exhibited such traits as courage under fire. And I've written a book called Real Heroes, and courage is a common theme throughout all 40 chapters. If you don't have role models to look up to, you won't have role models you venerate or try to emulate. So, recognizing that courage is a trait that some have possessed who have made the world a better place and without whom it's unimaginable where we'd be. I think that's the beginning of it. You'll come to appreciate it if you study it in people.
I think there's a saying, there's no atheists in foxholes.
Yeah.
I was tripping over myself because I felt like There was a Keynesian equivalent to that somewhere in my head rattling around. But there is this saying, there's no atheists in foxholes. To what extent do you feel like faith is like that? And is that good or bad? Is it a crutch for the human animal?
Well, the Bible talks in several places about how people lost their faith, ultimately came back to it, maybe not that same generation, but a later generation, but only after experiencing some real challenges. I think God sometimes says, look, you have strayed so far, you've got to suffer the consequences of your misbehavior before you see the light. And because he's a just God, he doesn't say you can do a lot of unjust things without any consequences. But sometimes as flawed human beings, we don't come around to doing the right thing or believing the right way until we've had to suffer the consequences of our misbehavior.
This is one of the things that for me, I've found myself being drawn back to my Catholicism around. And it's actually the cross. It's actually the lesson to tie these ideas together a little bit.
Yeah.
That in a very comfortable, wealthy society, I live a privileged life. This is my job. This is completely ridiculous that I can sit here and have a conversation with someone I really like, and that is my job. Like, that's bizarre. Like, I'd be fine digging ditches. I'm Italian. I like doing physical labor, but I don't. I have something better than that. I don't have a lot of crosses to bear. But the image of the cross says, oh, you will, and B, even he did.
Yeah.
So here you go to church, and it's like, well, this is the Son of God, and he's laying there, he's like this, bleeding with a, crown of thorns. It's macabre, it's grotesque, and I think that it is powerful in ways that I didn't appreciate growing up.
Yeah.
Because it says, or one way you can interpret it, which is the way I choose to, is we'll all face these moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so even he did.
And it's a statement of love, isn't it? For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. Jesus went to the crucifixion not out of contempt for human society, but rather for love of human society. He freely chose to make the supreme sacrifice so that you and I could be forgiven of sins for which we were both guilty and deserving of great punishment. I think that's, isn't that an amazing thing? What a wonderful gift that is. Do we realize how powerful that is? I think many of us don't sometimes.
I think it's such a useful reminder, and I think it's one of these things where the more comfortable life becomes, the more valuable and essential it is to be reminded that we actually, not only will we face challenges and trials that can be very painful, not the least of which being that, God willing, because I know my parents want me to outlive them.
Yeah.
That's what they want, just like I want my son to outlive me. But baked into that is knowing that we want the people we love the most to suffer through our own deaths.
Yeah.
That my parents want me to see them die.
Yeah.
Because that is the cost that is inescapable in me surviving.
Yeah.
And that is such a powerful, again, to speak to like the love of the father and mother. It's a really powerful reminder of that.
Yeah, I think so.
If you like this clip, you should check out the full video and all the other great content we've got at Dad Saves America. So be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell so you won't miss our new stuff as it drops each week.